Hey, what's up? Welcome back to your channel name. This time, we're going to dive into a story that will make you think twice before walking alone at night. Grab some snacks, turn off the lights, and listen closely. Eleanor Wren never imagined her life would change because of a single letter sealed with aged wax. That day, the London sky hung low and grey, clouds pressing heavily against the earth as if trying to suffocate it. After years of working as a freelance historian, chasing old tales from the ruins of forgotten towns, Eleanor's life had settled into a monotonous routine, void of surprise. Until a small package, bearing an ancient postmark and the distinct scent of decaying paper, arrived at her modest apartment. Inside, she found an official letter from the old law firm Holloway and Crenshaw, informing her that she had inherited a property on the outskirts of Dorset, a grand Georgian house named Hollow Manor. The letter mentioned the name of a distant relative, Agatha Wren, a woman Eleanor had never heard of, who had lived a secluded life in an isolated village. Since childhood, Eleanor had heard whispers about her family lineage. Murmurs of a great-grandmother disgraced by some unspeakable scandal. But the details had always been murky, drowned in shame and secrecy. Now, Hollow Manor seemed like a door to the answers she had never dared seek. Without much hesitation, Eleanor decided to accept the inheritance. Unknowingly, with that simple decision, she had not just unlocked a house but had unlatched a gate to something far older and darker. Something that had been waiting. Eleanor began her journey to Dorset under a dense, unyielding fog. The winding village road snaked through fields covered in dew, the landscape blurred and cold. Occasionally, gnarled trees loomed by the roadside, their twisted branches reaching out like blackened claws against the mist. Outside her car window, the world felt subtly wrong, as if shifted slightly askew, making her stomach churn with unease. Birds perched silently on skeletal branches, not a song in the air. Villagers she passed gazed out blankly, offering no greetings, only fleeting glances heavy with unspoken warnings. The map provided by the law firm was worn and confusing. Dirt roads, slick with mud, guided her deeper into the woods. The fog thickened until visibility was reduced to mere meters ahead. At times, Eleanor felt as though the car itself resisted her movements, the wheels sinking and dragging as if the land itself did not want her to pass. Finally, Hollow Manor emerged from the mist, an imposing figure half swallowed by the grey air. Relief did not come. Instead, a colder dread settled into her bones. Somewhere, beyond the thick trees, something unseen had already noticed her. The wrought iron gates of Hollow Manor towered over Eleanor, rusted and crowned with the Wren family crest, a black crow with hollow eyes. The bird seemed to stare down at her, not as a symbol, but as a silent sentry, weighing her worth. Stepping out of the car, Eleanor was immediately enveloped in the scent of wet earth and decay. Branches creaked overhead, swaying though the air felt deathly still. Every footstep she took on the gravel path seemed echoed by another set of invisible feet, always just behind. Despite the gate's ancient appearance, they opened easily under her hesitant push, letting out a groan that reverberated into the mist. Beyond them, a narrow pathway coiled toward the looming structure barely visible through the swirling fog. Its stone walls, once regal, now looked hollow and waiting. Among the trees, a thin figure appeared, a man cloaked in a long black coat, a battered fedora hiding most of his face. He did not move, merely watched, as if fused to the land by the same ancient sorrow that clung to Hollow Manor. With every step past the threshold, Eleanor sensed she was crossing into a realm where time itself had thinned, and rules of the living barely applied. The figure introduced himself as Mr. Hawthorne, caretaker of Hollow Manor for over 40 years. His voice was gravelly, as though worn down by the weight of secrets. His face was a map of deep, unnatural wrinkles, as if fear had etched itself into every line. Mr. Hawthorne spoke little, handing over a heavy iron key without ceremony, his gaze laden with silent warnings. Something in his eyes begged her to turn back, though he knew no one ever listened once they stepped this far. He explained briefly that Hollow Manor had been abandoned since Agatha Wren's death. No one from the village dared approach it anymore. Rumors swirled, tales of restless spirits, of cursed bloodlines, of things best left unspoken. Eleanor absorbed the information with cautious skepticism, assuming it was little more than the dramatics of isolated communities. She did not yet understand that Hollow Manor's horrors were rooted not in folklore, but in something that defied reason itself. Without another word, Mr. Hawthorne retreated into the fog, his figure dissolving as though he had never truly existed outside these cursed grounds. The front door groaned open under Eleanor's hand, revealing the breath of Hollow Manor, a thick, fetid blend of rotting wood, rusted metal, and the faint metallic tang of old blood. The entrance hall stretched before her, grand yet withering. Stained glass windows filtered what little light remained into sickly, distorted patterns on the floor. Every step Eleanor took upon the creaking wood echoed, too loudly, as though something unseen was listening closely. Portraits lined the walls, their subjects watching with blank, yet unsettlingly aware expressions. Some eyes seemed almost alive, tracking her progress into their domain. The air inside the house was colder than outside. Invisible fingers brushed along Eleanor's skin with every movement, raising goosebumps despite her efforts to stay calm. She reminded herself this was just a house, old, yes, and abandoned, but ultimately harmless. But every shadow seemed too deep, every whisper of wind too deliberate. Hollow Manor was not merely waiting for her arrival. It had been starved of life for too long, and now, it was awake. As her footsteps faded into the cavernous silence, Eleanor felt, with chilling certainty, that she had disturbed something that should have remained buried. Exploring the vast corridors, Eleanor quickly realized the house was far larger than any blueprint had suggested. Hallways twisted unexpectedly, rooms shifted in proportions, and entire wings seemed to appear and disappear depending on where she stood. Dust lay heavy on the furniture, and tattered curtains clung to windows like forgotten phantoms. Yet, despite decades of abandonment, there were undeniable signs of recent disturbances, footprints in the dust too fresh, candles melted but recently used, and mirrors smudged by what looked like the outline of human hands. Every few steps, Eleanor caught the fleeting scent of something sweet yet rotten, like flowers long dead. In the distance, sometimes behind her, sometimes ahead, soft footsteps echoed. Never rushed, never aggressive, but always present. As if someone, or something, was studying her movements, deciding what to do with the trespasser who dared wake the house. At the end of one dim corridor, Eleanor discovered a door unlike the others. It was heavier, reinforced with iron bands, and bore no handle, only a keyhole that matched the iron key given by Mr. Hawthorne. With trembling hands, she fitted the key into the lock. The mechanism clicked with a sound so loud it seemed to shudder through the walls. As the door swung open, a cold gust poured forth, carrying with it the oppressive weight of centuries. Inside was a study frozen in time. Dust-laden books lined the shelves, and in the center sat a massive desk, atop which rested a cracked oil lamp and a leather-bound journal. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the journal before finally picking it up. The first page bore a name she recognized from the inheritance letter, Agatha Wren, and beneath it, written in spidery ink, a chilling phrase, "To whom the house listens, it answers. To whom the house chooses, it binds." A low creak behind her made Eleanor spin around, but the doorway was empty. Still, she felt an undeniable certainty that she was no longer alone in the study. In the corner of the study stood a tall mirror, its surface cloudy with age. Eleanor caught a glimpse of herself, but something was wrong. Her reflection was a half-second slower, lagging behind her movements like a poorly synced film. She stepped closer, scrutinizing the glass. Her reflection smiled when she had not. The smile widened, teeth too sharp, too numerous. Panic seized her, and she stumbled backward, knocking into the desk. The mirror began to hum softly, as if vibrating at a frequency too low for comfort. In that distorted surface, behind her own reflection, figures began to materialize, faint at first, then more solid, a woman in a tattered Victorian gown, a man missing half his face, a child with eyes black as the void. Each figure reached out, pressing hands against the inside of the mirror, desperate to escape. Eleanor clutched the journal to her chest and fled the study, slamming the iron door behind her. The key, still in the lock, turned itself slowly with a final click, locking her out, or locking something in. As Eleanor raced down the corridor, the house shifted around her. Walls groaned and stretched, doors that had been opened slammed shut on their own, while others swung invitingly ajar. Paintings wept black tar down their canvases, and chandeliers swayed on unseen winds. The house was alive, and her presence had stirred it from its long slumber. Hollow Manor was not merely haunted by restless spirits, it was an entity unto itself, fueled by centuries of grief, rage, and despair. Each footfall seemed to drag her deeper into its web. The deeper Eleanor went, the stronger the sense grew that Hollow Manor did not want her to leave, not yet. Not before she learned its full story. Not before she fulfilled the role it had long been preparing for her. In the distance, an old grandfather clock began to toll, each gong heavier than the last, vibrating through the marrow of her bones. Time itself seemed to distort with each strike, twisting seconds into endless loops. Reaching what she thought was the entrance hall, Eleanor found the grand front door, the door she had entered through, sealed with thick chains that had not been there before. As she backed away, heart pounding, she caught sight of her reflection again in a cracked window. This time, it was not lagging behind. It was watching her. Smiling. A thin, dark mark now stretched across her collarbone, a bruise that pulsed like a heartbeat beneath her skin. She did not remember receiving any injury, but the mark was there, etched into her flesh by unseen hands. A part of the house had claimed her already. Above her, the chandelier flickered violently, and a low whisper filled the air, not from a single voice, but from hundreds, layered atop one another like the churning of a dead sea. The last thing Eleanor saw before everything plunged into darkness was the portrait at the end of the hall, her own face, freshly painted, staring back at her from the canvas. Hollow Manor had chosen its heir. In the engulfing darkness, Eleanor staggered blindly, hands outstretched against unseen walls. Disoriented and trembling, she stumbled into a room she did not recognize, yet it felt intimately familiar. On the walls hung portraits of strangers, but when she blinked, their faces shifted into versions of herself, Eleanor as a bride, Eleanor as a grieving widow, Eleanor cradling a child she had never born. Visions flooded her mind, memories not her own, yet tinged with an unmistakable familiarity. A life lived within these walls, tragedies endured, betrayals suffered. The house was not only haunting her, it was sewing fragments of its history into her very soul, blurring the lines between who she was and who the house wanted her to become. The floor creaked under Eleanor's hesitant steps. Beneath the warped wood, faint murmurs rose, desperate, pleading voices calling her name. She knelt instinctively, pressing her ear against the floor. She heard a woman sobbing, a child's laughter twisted into a cry, a man growling in rage. The stories of generations past seeped up through the house itself, each tale of sorrow and death fighting to be heard, to take root within her. The whispering crescendoed into an almost intelligible chant, repeating one word over and over, stay. The house did not merely trap bodies, it collected souls, weaving them into its very foundation. And now it called for Eleanor to join them. In a narrow hallway, the wallpaper peeled away to reveal something carved deep into the wooden walls beneath, words etched in frantic, jagged strokes. The letters were smeared with something dark and flaking, something that smelled of iron and decay. You cannot leave. You are the house. The realization struck Eleanor with the weight of inevitability. Every step she had taken since her arrival had been orchestrated. Every locked door, every whisper in the dark, every twisted reflection. All pieces of a design far older than her own existence. Hollow Manor was not cursed by outside forces, it was the curse itself. And now, it had chosen its next vessel. As she backed away from the bloody warning, Eleanor felt the prickling sensation of being watched. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, the faded floral patterns twisting into grotesque faces. Thousands of eyes blinked open across the wallpaper, disembodied, watching, judging. Every soul the house had consumed now peered through the veil, their silent screams vibrating in the very bones of the structure. In the corner of her eye, Eleanor caught movement, a figure, half submerged into the wall, reaching out with withered hands as if begging her to join them. She stumbled backward, but no matter which direction she turned, the eyes followed, endless, pitiless, and patient. Rushing blindly, Eleanor found herself back in the grand hall, the chained front door looming before her. She pounded against the iron bindings until her hands bled, but the door did not so much as shudder. Behind her, the whispering rose again, but this time it was no longer pleading. It was triumphant. Above the door, new words had appeared, scorched into the wood by unseen hands: "The house is you. The house is eternal." A chilling coldness wrapped around Eleanor's ankles, pulling her down as the floor beneath her turned to something soft, wet, and suffocating. She screamed silently as she was dragged into the foundation of Hollow Manor, becoming part of its endless tapestry of lost souls. Somewhere, deep in the shadows, a clock chimed once more. Hollow Manor, satisfied, settled back into its restless slumber, waiting patiently for the next visitor it could claim. That was our story for tonight. Do you think it's just an ordinary tale, or is there something more to it? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. See you, if you still dare to watch next time.